Hello and welcome back to the Star Wars Generations podcast. I'm Matthew, your host. I'm Matthew, your host, and while we all enjoyed Erin getting to have a solo run on Solo, today the whole crew is back so I can defend myself against spurious accusations around music and my age. I am not a Celine Dion fan. I will never be old enough to be a Celine Dion fan.
What
Thank
happened
you
when I
very
was
much.
gone?
The last week's episode, there were some aspersions made, but nonetheless, we're going to put that in the past. Like this movie, we're going to ignore everything that happened before it and just talk about it. Just talk about
Hmm.
this episode. We're
Okay.
talking, of course, today about Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, the final movie in the trilogy, the final movie in the 9-episode Skywalker Saga that started with A New Hope. And we got a lot to say about it. And I'm going to start from the beginning and just say this is a movie that I have had a lot to say about. The podcast had already started by the time the movie came out, I believe. And so I think we've already done like 2 episodes on it where it was me talking a lot. And I've mentioned it other times. So mostly this week, I want to hear from you guys about what you thought about the movie. I'm sure I'll have some thoughts to interject. But like the last one, there's a lot of controversy at this movie. There's a lot of people who really love it. There's a lot of people who really hate it. And there's a lot of tired old arguments that we've all heard a million times before. This isn't the place for that. On this episode, Rey is a Skywalker. That's what we're told. We can discuss if we like that or not, but that's what it is. This is the canon, and we're going forward with that. So let me just start by asking you, Erin, what do you think of this movie?
I have such complicated feelings. Here's the thing. I really enjoy it. Like, it's a good movie. It's a really good movie. But I just couldn't help watching it and being like, but we just symbolically destroyed Kylo's mask. Why is it back? Or like, didn't we just talk about not continuing the Jedi? And didn't we burn those texts? Like, there was a few things like that that really got me. But honestly, like, just watching it, it's very entertaining. It's a good movie. I'm bummed about a lot of the missed character opportunities, but we did still get some pretty cool new characters.
Yeah.
And overall, it's an exciting movie. Yeah.
Alex, what about yourself?
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of this movie. I feel like anytime I've talked about it with any of my friends, I am in the minority, if not the only one, who very much enjoys it. I saw it in theaters 9 times.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I think for me, I want to clarify, like, I'm not just like blindly like this movie's perfect. I have many issues with it as well.
Yeah.
Like, and we'll get into them as we talk more here. But I think for me, like, it was the first time in this trilogy, and really in a while, where like we just got to go on an adventure with like, we were with Rey, Finn, Poe, like, the core gang. We can also talk about the fact they left Rose out later, but like just having the 3 of them with 3PO and R2D2, and like it was just like the first time I felt like since maybe even the originals, we really just got like a fun little adventure following the same little crew around the whole movie. And yeah, I agree. There were some weird choices made, and like, bringing back, the way the Death Star very clearly blows up completely, and now there's just a big old hunk of it there, but still intact. And some of the weird things they introduced was odd. But something else I also thought was a lot of people I know don't love is it doesn't bother me as much as I think it bothers a lot of other people that Palpatine returned. I think the way that it was done was very questionable and poorly done.
Yeah.
I also very much see, and we'll talk again, I know we'll talk about, I see the arguments of like it diminishes what Anakin's sacrifice was. I get all of that. To me, I think having Palpatine be this maniacal puppet master behind all of these events, it kind of makes sense to me. And I have actually something to say about Mr. Ian McDermott when we get to that part. But in general, I would just say that fun adventure movie, definitely some mistakes. And I think that like the way that JJ kept, like you said, Erin, pulling it back from what Rian Johnson had done was frustrating. But overall, I really enjoyed the film.
That's awesome. I really love hearing that. I love how people get to enjoy it. And I think it's most we're going to talk about. For those who haven't heard me talk about it before, I'll just give a quick summary. I definitely agree with the idea that I think it was, to me, kind of this is the exact opposite of Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones, I think, is a very important piece of the overall story that I think is very poorly executed. This, I think, is very well executed and doesn't make any sense to me in the Star Wars story. But I agree with you. Like, just as a fun movie by itself, it's not painful to watch the way I think some others can be. And I didn't say it.
I'm saying it. It can be hard to watch that movie sometimes.
Fair. So let's get into some of the things about this movie, and let's actually start with the Palpatine of it all. Tell me more about what you mean about it's not the problem that he's back, but the execution of it.
So, in my personal opinion, I find that, through all of the, the books, the games, the movies, Palpatine has always been like this shadowy figure has been kind of pulling the strings. I mean, he controlled Maul. He's the one who created the downfall of the Republic, created the Empire. He had this whole contingent plan in place. And even like before we knew about Project Cinder or the contingency to like rebuild the Empire, you go back to the Expanded Universe books, which are like very beloved by the community. I feel like we had a clone of Palpatine. We had clones being made of multiple characters. And it just always made sense to me. And maybe it was because I read the EU books, but it always made sense to me that Palpatine would have had a plan, that he would not just have been in one body and been that arrogant that he would die and just be done. Like, it makes sense to me that he would be prepared to return in some way. And as the Clone Wars came out and then Rebels came out, they explored more and more like kind of mystical areas of the Force, like really kind of more, especially in Rebels, the last season, far out there stuff with the Loth Wolves and, the World Between Worlds and all that stuff. And it, to me, felt like the first time in live action, we were getting some of that really, to me, cool and interesting Sith lore. And like, it just, I don't know, to me, it made sense that he would be the one pulling all the strings and coming back. But it felt silly to me that the explanation you received was somehow Palpatine returned. And like, it just wasn't an explanation. Like, you can kind of eventually piece together that like some Sith, but there's been this secret Sith world out in the, wild space, unknown regions where these Sith acolytes have basically been like prepping for this. But like, it's just weird to have that kind of thrown in there without any like preparation for that or like any explanation. I know we're backfilling now. I would say this movie, I think, has actually benefited more than any other Star Wars property by the backfilling done in the shows between The Mandalorian, The Bad Batch, all of these things kind of trying to like make it make more sense. And it is making more sense to me, I think, as time goes on. But I think at the time, the execution and explanation was poor. It did away with the character of Snoke in kind of a really frustrating way because he was really interesting on his own. I think that like Palpatine could have come back without him having been Snoke. And they could have done a better job explaining it. And again, I think they're backfilling it in a really effective way now, but it's been, what is it now, 5 years since this movie came out? Almost 6. And it took a while for them to get to this point, is my kind of point on it all.
Erin, what about you?
Yeah. So I agree with Alex about a lot of the stuff with like the EU, like especially a lot of the Old Republic. I love reading Old Republic books. And so much of the Sith stuff is about like immortality and finding ways to pass your spirit on to another living being. So I like it being brought up. I think how abruptly it was brought up in a major motion picture was just like not the most palatable, because this did stick out to me how like they go, that scene where there's the snake and he's all angry and then Rey heals him and then he goes away and the boys are like, what the fuck just happened? And she's like, I just transferred a little bit of my life force to him and just healed him. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? Nobody's ever said that before. What does that mean?
Might have been cool if Obi-Wan did that to Qui-Gon, just as an example.
And they also really, I don't know if you'll remember, but the week the movie came out, that Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day it was. So like the movie came out Thursday, Friday, and that week they released an episode of The Mandalorian where Grogu does force healing first so they could try to explain it. And I appreciated that effort. But again, you released that 2 or 3 days before the movie came out. Like
most people,
like, I mean, a lot of the diehard fans will have seen it and like understand the concept at that point a little bit at least. But like, you're really not giving us a lot of time to like take that in, especially with like we've seen like Darth Maul survived, sure, and that's crazy on its own. But like you're like the Qui-Gon death specifically has never really been remedied because that could have been a very easy fix based on what we've seen. Now that force healing being used almost as a crutch in future Star Wars properties.
Yeah, I think you make really good points. I don't like Palpatine coming back. I was very against it at first. I think I've come more to terms with it. And I think you're right that the in-between stuff, the TV shows, and especially also some of the books have really helped to make episode 9 better. I would say I think actually the third movie is the one that I think benefits the most from Clone Wars, but I think it's close between the two.
Fair.
I think for me, one thing I kept thinking about was that if this had been set up previously, like, and granted, we all know that like Rian Johnson and Abrams didn't coordinate well, and that's a whole other story. But even if just we'd seen hints of this in episode 7, Force Awakens, like if there'd been little bits about cloning, if there'd been little bits about Palpatine, I think that would have set it up so much more. Instead, this felt very lazy to me. It felt like Abrams had literally no idea what was going to be his big bad in the 9th movie, which we know is his style. Like, he started Lost having no idea how it was going to end, and lots of people are happy about how all that worked out. And one thing I was thinking about, and again, this is in an imaginary world where, let me back up a second. And one thing I was thinking about was that I think part of why it felt frustrating to me is that the most interesting part of the story where everyone hears this broadcast and all of a sudden people are like, wait, could that be Palpatine? Happens completely off screen. And imagine if we had good coordination between these movies, and instead that broadcast happens as the last moment of episode 8. Like they're getting away on the Millennium Falcon, or we're seeing people across the galaxy starting to hear about what happened, and maybe they're starting to talk about should they help Leia or whatever, and then they hear that voice. Like, that would have worked so much better. But to just tell us, oh yeah, he's back, and that happened, and it was a broadcast, which sounds really weird. I watched those opening credits again, and I'm like, why didn't you show that to me? Why did you tell that to me?
Yeah,
and it's definitely, I think, on the, like you said, just I don't think they went into this trilogy having a strong, cohesive plan and how they wanted to shape it all out, and that made it suffer, unfortunately. I do want to real quick throw in that this last weekend was Twin Cities Con, and Ian McDermott happened to be there and give a panel. It was super cool.
Ian McDermott, by the way, just for those who don't know, is the actor who plays Palpatine.
Yes. Yeah. I got to ask a question. I actually asked him I asked him, like, did you have a backstory for Palpatine in the back of your head when you were first filming in episode 6? And he was like, absolutely not. I got lunch with George Lucas and he liked my nose. And so he said, like, you're in. And basically just like, he was like, within 2 days, I was a ton of makeup being put on my face. I was being put in all black in a hood I could barely see out of, and had to climb a dark staircase. And all I could think about was don't fall off the staircase. And he's like, I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't see anything. So basically he was like, I wasn't thinking about any backstory. I was just trying to like keep it together, which I thought was really funny. But sorry, that was a small tangent. My point was, someone asked him specifically, like, how did you feel about Palpatine coming back? And he said, well, obviously, personally, I was thrilled. And he said, it also makes sense to me. He's like, as I've embodied this character, like, he's like, someone like Palpatine would not have, risen to where he was without having backup plans for his backup plans. And basically kind of what I said was like, it makes sense to him that he would have a clone prepared and have like, an army ready to fight back, even if the Empire failed. But he also like did kind of, without saying it, was kind of like, how it all came out and how it was produced. Like, everyone can have their opinion on that. So it felt like he was kind of around it, saying that he felt like it wasn't probably the best executed, but he liked and agreed with the idea. So I just thought it was a little interesting thing.
Yeah. That's kind of cool. So let's get into more of the movie, because that's kind of how we all start off. We're now on this new Rebel base, and there's a whole bunch more people, which again, sort of just, this just doesn't line up with episode 8, and we have to deal with that. Let's start talking about the different characters. what do we think about Poe and the journey he gets to go on in this movie?
I wanted Poe to be gay. I'll be really honest with you. I wanted Finn and Poe to get together, and I was really disappointed that they heavily steered away from that one. It felt like it was implied in 2 different movies.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like I don't want to put words in any of the Disney people's mouths, but it feels like classic Disney where they like aren't willing to fully commit on screen. Like, we got 2 women kissing at the end of the movie on screen for 0.2 seconds, and it felt like they kind of threw away what could have been a really cool romance story and arc there. Maybe that was just in my own head, but that was just something I thought was going to be really cool and I was excited about, and they kind of threw it away to have Poe have a romance with some random character we had never met before.
And whose face we never actually see.
Yeah, we only see her eyes briefly, and I'm just like, I don't know. To me, it felt forced and silly to do that.
Yeah, and I didn't love, and I know actually a lot of Latino fans talked about this, like, why do we have to give him a background as like a drug smuggler?
Yes.
Like, it just feels so on the nose.
And unnecessary.
Along with the fact that like every other person of color we're getting, with the exception of Rose Tico, who, as you said, is barely in the movie, also has a background as a criminal or a spice runner or a stormtrooper or something like that. I think also I was just kind of disappointed that we don't get any closure on everything that happened in The Last Jedi, and there's a great book, Resistance Reborn, which is all about the period in between episode 8 and episode 9. And that talks about like him really feeling all the guilt of all the loss that happened because of his inability to trust Holdo and stuff like that. I would have liked a little bit more of that. And yes, absolutely. I feel like him and Finn was teased throughout the first 2 movies. I also think Finn and Rey was teased. Personally, I would have loved a bisexual polyamorous thing between the 3 of them. That's probably pretty far off in the stratosphere, but at least give any of those 3 to get together.
I mean, just the fact that none of the, I feel like after, it just felt like it fell in the most vanilla possible way it could have in the end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I would agree.
Good girl falls for bad guy. I don't know, man.
But don't worry, they're both white.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll talk about the kiss in a little bit. That is something I have strong opinions on.
We'll get to that. So how about Finn?
But sorry, I just want to say real quick. I want to say I echo what you said. It really bothered me that they gave Poe like a smuggling background and also like a one-off unnecessary situation. Like a million things you could have done with him, and you just choose that, and it felt just not needed. I honestly would rather not know his past and have that be his past. So
yeah.
Finn, Erin, you have a thought on Finn?
Oh, I love Finn. I feel so bad for Finn. I feel like he spent so much of the movie like sticking up for Rey, and Rey was kind of just like, "You don't know me. I don't even know me. Fuck you." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Damn!" Like he's just out here trying to give his love, and it sucks to like. They spent the first movie building his relationship with Rey and making them close, and then they didn't like the optics of the relationship, or maybe they decided they wanted to go a different way, and then they added Rose, and then Rose and Finn were kind of a thing, and she was obsessed with him, he was maybe into it. Tale as old as time. And then this next movie is just like the interaction we get between them is like, "Are you coming? No, I have to stay and study defense plans or whatever." And he like puts a hand on her shoulder. He's like, "We got this." And I'm like, oh, that was painful.
And I will say that is partially due to outside circumstances, which on the one hand, like J.J. Abrams and the writers had no control over. On the other hand, Disney had a lot of control over that they didn't take, which is namely that Kelly Marie Tran, the actress who plays Rose Tico, who was just horribly, horribly abused and harassed and threatened by the haters on social media. And Disney did not come to her protection in any way. And by the end of it, she said very specifically, like, "I don't want a big part in this movie. If I have to be in this movie, I'll play a small part. I don't want a big part. I don't want to be a target again." And I think the movie suffers because of that, but I also think 100% she did what she had to do. And so, yeah, so I at least give them the credit that I don't think they intentionally wanted to like write out her and Finn and Rose, but certainly like Disney's failure to kind of step up and like call out its fans and be like, hey, this is not okay, contribute to it happening eventually.
Did Rose and Ray ever interact in any movie? I don't think they did.
I don't
I don't think they did either.
Not that I know of.
That's just crazy. Yeah,
Did
I don't
not
know.
pass the Bechdel test.
No.
Oh wait, never mind. Leia.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Leia, that was, I mean, from what I've read, they basically had tried. The one thing they did, quote unquote, plan in this trilogy is that like each of the original characters would have a really big role in one of the movies. So like Han was the first movie, Luke was the second movie, and Leia was planned for the third movie. And of course, Carrie Fisher passes away. And it does not bother me per se that they included like little bits of her in there, but like it just, I don't know. The way she died in the movie, it felt like they could have maybe killed her off in episode 8 and had it been a little more impactful than R2D2 just sadly watching her die with her face off screen as her hand falls over. And was she holding the dice again?
I think so.
Yeah, the dice that Disney decided to make really, really important.
That I'll admit, I never noticed in the original trilogy.
No one noticed them. And then if like I couldn't speak of the Solo movie, but one thing I would have brought up if I was here last week was they purposely have so many details and zoom ins on that dice because they made a big deal out of it in episode 8. And they're like, we have to like set the table for how important these dice are. Which is silly. Now, do I have a pair of those dice hanging from my rearview mirror in my car? I do. I very much do have a pair of those dice hanging from the rearview mirror of my car. But it felt very forced when they were shown tiny in like one frame of the original movie.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So what do you think it was that Finn kept wanting to tell Rey?
Oh my God, I completely forgot about that. Okay, so here's what they want us to think. He's saying, oh my God, I love you. I've always wanted to be with you and I miss you and I want you to want me. What I'm pretty sure, what I want him to say is, hey, yo, can you describe to me once more about how that force feels? Because I feel like I got that shit.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm on one. Like, I feel like we're in the same place, babe. That's
exactly how I would have said it.
Yeah. Those I feel like are, we're led to believe, obviously, like romance, because it's like, oh, you're about to die. What are you going to tell them?
Right.
But yeah, I hope it was about something more honestly important and sincere.
Yeah, Alex, what do you think? I
said the exact same thing. I think that he was going to tell her that like he thinks he's force sensitive, and like I think that the fan base has been led on to believe that he may be force sensitive throughout the movies, and I know that I don't know if it was a deleted scene or they rewrote it, but originally in the fight on Exegol, above Exegol, like he was going to display a use of the force, and they decided to cut it and not introduce that late in the movie. And so I think I agree there. And I think it was that he was trying to tell her, like, I think I'm force sensitive. Like, maybe you can like teach me some of that shit.
Yeah. And I do like that in a later, granted, it's one of the animated Lego Star Wars movies. So like take it with huge grains of salt, but in the kind of like summer adventure one, Beach Vacation, whatever it is called, they do Obi-Wan comes, Ghost Obi-Wan comes and it's like, Finn, you're supposed to be a Jedi. Yeah,
I love that part.
I love that part.
It's so good. It's so good. And it just all felt so weird. And I know John Boyega has said that he felt like that there was a lot of racism in terms of how the character of Finn was treated, in terms of like not wanting him to be with Rey. And then, that kind of like, it was amazing to get a woman Jedi, but that it had been really teased that we were also going to get a black Jedi, and that didn't happen. Granted, we had, Mace Windu, but in terms of like, a main protagonist. So yeah, I think there's a lot that happened behind the scenes that we don't know the details of, but I think like I like where they went with him and the other stormtroopers, and I do like this idea of other stormtroopers kind of wanting to fight back. I wish though there had been some level of like, so therefore let's try and like maybe like rescue or like turn some of those other stormtroopers or like convince them to rise up, because it did feel sort of weird of like, yeah, the stormtroopers are all orphans. We're all like, it's not their fault. They're all programmed from they were young. Let's slaughter them by the millions while we blow up all these ships, like it just.
I will say those ships, the ships that they blew up mostly though are ships from Exegol. And technically, they don't know who's on there. It could just be Sith like acolytes, right?
Well,
Fair.
it's I believe the canon on that is that the Sith troopers are like the children and descendants of like the Sith acolytes who are living there. So they're like from birth brainwashed, kind of like Plato's cave style, to just believe that like
Right.
the Sith and the Dark Lord and the dark side are like the end all be all, and Palpatine is like the ultimate master. So
Okay, so not them
So
necessarily,
there's
but
still
they're-
children.
they're
on
still brainwashed from
ships?
birth, unfortunately, but it's maybe slightly better. I don't know.
At least they have their parents.
I, I will say in this movie, I did like Rey through most of it. I think Daisy Ridley did a really excellent job. I think the opening sequence of her
Mhm.
training is really cool.
Mhm.
I think that she is. You see her growth. You see how just ferocious she is. You can see like a continuation. One of the few things that did continue from episode 8 is her like back and forth on like the dark side. I think like, you know, you're like, I mean, you see her fucking shoot force lightning and blow up a ship, which was again weird, I guess, story wise, but visually really cool. Alex
Yeah.
was a fan of that on screen. But like you see her fighting that, and like I guess like I would argue not as tactfully or gracefully done as they did with Luke in episode 6, but like a similar vibe of could she turn, like could she become, you know, like in the end, could Kylo turn to the light side and rage into the dark side? Like that was a genuine question. Like you weren't 100% sure if not, and I appreciated that. I appreciated the way that she portrayed that character, and then showing her resilience at the end of the movie, like when faced with like impossible circumstances.
Mhm.
And she's funny.
She is funny.
The movie
Yeah,
was. I forget always. This movie is funny.
Yeah,
It is funny.
I think it lands a lot of humor. I think it does a lot. I think the acting is good. I thought the directing overall was pretty decent. And I agree with you. I really like Rey's journey in this. I feel like they came up to a line that I really wanted them to explore and then backed away from it. In that, and the second movie, it's kind of started this out, and then like the Force lightning. Like I really wanted to see them explore like, what if you're not so doctrinaire about like avoiding the dark side at all costs? You know. In Ahsoka with Balin and Shin, we're now getting these characters who are kind of some interesting, like they're not Sith, but they're definitely somewhere on the dark side. And you know, I think they did some really interesting things of exploring that with Rey and exploring like sometimes she taps into her anger and it makes her a better fighter. And yeah, I just wish that had been explored further.
I agree.
And if we get into plot points, the last character maybe we could touch on is Kylo in this movie.
Well, let's just talk about Rey a little bit because
sure. I thought you guys were done. I'm sorry. Yeah.
We change one of the biggest things about her, the whole idea that she's from nothing.
Oh yes.
How do we feel about her being a granddaughter of Mr. Palpatine?
Grandpappy Palps.
Good old Palp.
Ian McDermott did say, he goes,
Palps.
the thing that shocked me the most is I have a granddaughter.
Oh, that's funny. I don't know. It's just that's the thing that most glaringly in my face is like, this is so different from movie 2. Because Kylo was just shouting at her, "You are nothing," and now he's like, "Remember, I know you know," and I'm like, "What the fuck, man?"
Right.
Like that's just like difficult for me to get past. Just how quickly that switches, which is like, yeah, sure, he got different information, but I liked it when she was nothing.
Yeah, I've heard the argument that like he lied to her in episode 8 to try and like evoke an emotional response out of her. But I agree with Erin. I mean, that probably to me is also like one of the weirdest things to me is that like
deviations.
It's just strange. Like it, like because based again like on the more expanded canon of it all is that his son isn't even like his biological son. It's like a clone of him, I guess.
Right.
Which like I kind of wanted it to be like a son he had when he was having an affair with that woman that bald lady who stood next to him in the Senate. What's her name? The really creepy looking one. There is some canon somewhere, I swear to God, where they were like actually like sexual partners. She like it's like in episode 2 and 3, she stands. It's Masamida. Sorry, I can't ever say his name right. Palpatine, and then this like very pale, bald, goth-looking woman who apparently like worshipped the ground Palpatine walked on, and apparently they had a thing. So I was always like, oh, what if they had a kid? That would make like a little more sense to me. But like a random clone, so they like raised the daughter of a rogue Palpatine clone and this other woman we know nothing about. And they like turned against Palpatine, and I just felt like very like kind of weird and out there, and then they like again, like I mean, as soon as like, you know, I almost appreciated a little more that she was like, I'm gonna choose instead to be a Skywalker. Because I appreciate the concept at least of like you're not defined by your parents or your family. Like you can choose who you are. I mean, a lot of us have like problematic families and parents, and you know, it's good to be able to like separate yourself from that. But it all was so rushed. When you find out she's a Palpatine like 2/3 into the movie, and within a span of an hour, I'm not a Palpatine, I'm a Skywalker. Like it's just whiplash around.
Yeah. Yeah, it felt to me like there were two fundamental points from The Last Jedi that I really loved. The idea that anyone can become a Jedi. And we just abandoned that with her, and we totally forgot about the little slave kid on Canto Bight. And also the idea that sometimes just being on the right side isn't enough, and you have to do more than just hope they'll all show up and there will be more of us. And this just kind of abandoned both of those. Now, I said at the beginning that I wanted to not. I am talking a good deal, but in part because you all keep bringing up the things I don't like about the movie. I thought the whole point was that you liked some things about this movie.
I do. Well, my point is that like I mean, okay, if I think that visually speaking, Rise of Skywalker is stunning as a visual person. I mean, like Pasana, beautiful planet. The way that like you know, that like scene where they're doing the dance and the music, it felt very much like it looked very Middle Eastern, very Moroccan in a way. And I appreciated, you know, some of that. I appreciated like, again, we can discuss the viability of the Death Star being as intact as it was, but like I said, I really enjoyed the movie. I understand there's problems with it, but like I thought that planet was cool. I thought that like Rey exploring the inside of the Death Star was, you know, interesting. Kind of was a harken back to her scavenger days, and like a callback to Episode 7. Even just the concept, again, even if it was kind of weirdly placed, that like Palpatine had like a secret room just off screen, Episode 6, where he like, it would make sense to me that he would hoard Sith artifacts and relics, and that like he would have a secret room. How the door is working, I don't really know, but I don't know. It's just like, I think a lot of the sets are really cool. I think the actual adventure was fun. I feel like I'm engaged the whole movie. Babu Frick, incredible character introduction.
Yep.
Love that little guy.
Yes.
And like for me, this whole movie is like the tale of kind of two sides. Like on one side, it's weird that like you little Annie decided to program C-3PO with Sith as a language back when he was a kid. But
of course,
the concept is fun that like they have to like C-3PO has to sacrifice himself and to like give us this clue to get us to the Death Star.
I just need to jump in on that one because that felt really wrong to me. Because it like, yes, he makes a big sacrifice, but everyone else is like, dude, what's the big deal? You're a droid. Let's just do that. Like first, they don't even ask him. They just decide they're going to do it. And then we just cut to a shot where he says, you know, we're glad you agreed to do this, without ever actually showing them convincing him and him agreeing. And it's funny because all of that happens moments after. Who's the new droid that doesn't like to be touched?
I don't know his name.
Dio,
thank you. That, you know, Rey is like, oh, someone really treated you badly. And I'm like, oh, look, droid rights. Droid rights are cool. Oh, nope. We're going to destroy 3PO without him having any agency in this. Okay, cool. Never mind.
Let's just take him out. Yeah, that was... I don't know. It's weird, but it also feels like classic. Because I feel I'm almost positive something like that happens in the Clone Wars to C-3PO. And he's all like, no. But also I think that was a bad guy doing it to him, so consent wasn't on the table.
I mean, I think that 3PO has been like a comical relief and a doormat for characters throughout the series. So it kind of made sense to me that would happen. But he also like, I liked it. Like, yeah, they didn't ask him at the end. He was like, you know, I'm just thankful I got to be here with my friends. And like, it sounded like at the end he was making the choice to do it.
Right.
I know. I thought it was just a cool moment because 3PO always has been kind of just a laughing stock. He finally had a really important role, and Red Eye 3PO, kind of badass looking.
Kind of.
And I mean, it was also funny afterwards. Where he just like, "Who are you people? What is going on?" It's like reverted 3PO back to his scared little self. Was really funny to me. But and not Planet 2, which I now cannot remember the name of. They introduced a lot of really interesting, unique planets, like the snowy planet they were on here. Exegol is fucking cool. I'm sorry. Like in the beginning of the movie, when Kylo pulls up, and it's just this like monolithic thing, and you're hearing Darth Vader and Snoke and Palpatine, and there's these giant statues of Sith Lords, and there's lightning, and I'm like, this is exactly how I would picture a Sith homeworld to look like. The vibes were immaculate, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Very creepy, very well done. And again, we can debate up and down whether Palpatine should have come back, but like his portrayal and that giant robotic arm moving him around and shit, like that was stuff. And that whole sequence of kind of like stuff of nightmares. That was creepy as hell, and I really appreciated it. Visually, this movie really blows me away.
That's fair.
I agree. Yeah, Exegol. I love planets that have cool climates.
Yeah.
Like Camino. It's like Camino, but Sith.
Yeah.
As far as like constant storm and like
Goth Camino.
Emo Camino.
Emo Camino.
God. Stay classy, Emo Camino.
Emo Camino. That's so funny. I agree. I think the unique planets and like the lightsaber duel on the last planet, again, which name is escaping me, the water planet on the Death Star.
Endor.
Oh, right. It was a different moon of Endor. It was a different moon of Endor. But did it have a, never mind. It was silly to me that there wasn't really music happening during the fight. Like they just showed us the no music route, which like, I feel like lightsaber duels always have some cool music going with them. But like, it was a cool fight. I mean, it just felt like, I don't know. It felt like there was a lot of emotion on it, but then it became just like who can do more, who can act harder, or who can like do more crazy tricks and stuff. And then like this, like, I don't know, like then Rey finally wins, and then she heals him anyway. And just all of it felt like, why do we have that fight? Was it just to get some angst out, like some sexual tension out? Like what? I don't know what's happening here. Well, visually again, cool, but like the actual execution was just like, why? What is happening?
You wanted to talk about Kylo, so let's talk about Kylo, and who I guess becomes Ben Solo by the end. What'd you think of his arc?
We love Ben Solo. I am happy he's turned back to the light side, I will say. Again, it feels a little rushy there, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like he's fighting. He's so hell bent on, killing the Emperor, becoming the new Emperor, like inheriting that Sith spirit that Palpatine wants to give to Rey. And then like he fights Rey one time. I guess he fights her twice. But he fights her in real life one time. I don't know how to describe the other fighting they did.
I will say the fight where she's on his ship and he's down on the planet was amazing.
It was like, how would you describe? So they're fighting. They're actually fighting each other, but are they fighting through the Force?
Yeah, they're fighting through the sort of Force connection that's been set up.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. The first time I saw that, I was very confused, but I eventually got to that conclusion as well. But I feel like it took a couple battles, and then like at the end of the day, it took like Force Ghost, not actual Force Ghost, just a quote memory of Han Solo somehow talking to Kylo Ren to convince him to just throw his lightsaber into the water and become a good guy again. I understand, like for movies, we saw the turmoil in him, and it would have made complete sense to me for him to turn to the light side, but I just felt like it was poorly executed. Like again, like I it just you could a little more like wrestling, a little more like he was so resolved at the end of episode 8 and through the beginning of episode 9. It felt weird for him to just like turn on a dime like that without more like discussions and things going on.
Yeah, I agree. It felt pretty quick. I'm just sitting there like, so why didn't you just join her in the last movie? Like we ended up where we were gonna be, guys. Come on. Not saying that like I wanted him to die a Sith, but like.
But then we couldn't have seen Han Solo again, which made no sense.
That's true. Well, it makes sense because Carrie Fisher died and
Yes.
Harrison Ford loved her, so
Yes.
he agreed to do more.
That one I kind of let them off the hook for because I think that was one where like real life circumstances intervened.
For sure.
But I do think it would have been a much better movie because I imagine it did feel like, Harrison Ford did his best job, but it just felt like a weird connection between the two. And I think they'd set up everything with him and Leia so much more.
Yeah, like if she had actually died and like the Force ghosts of Leia comes to say like, I forgive you, or like, being able to have that moment between Carrie Fisher and Adam Driver, I think would have been really, really special on screen. But I get what you mean though. Like you kind of had to fill it in, and I did enjoy Luke Skywalker Force Ghost. Luke acting as a Force Ghost acted the same kind of fool he did as a human, and I really appreciated it.
That's fair.
We saw a lot of Force ghosties this time around.
But then again, Rey just raises an X-wing that's been underwater for years, supposedly, and it just.
I thought Luke raised that.
He did. Sorry, I'm sorry. You're correct. Luke raised it, and it was a callback to episode 5. You're absolutely correct. But still, how does that ship just suddenly work? It's been, again, underwater for years in an ocean planet.
I think you don't understand just how durable, space mechanics are.
Just like that ship they found in the middle of the Pasana Desert that hadn't been used for like 20 years and just was able to get working real quick.
Just turned on.
Exactly.
Just turned on, yeah.
Exactly.
Which is, I think Star Wars does that sometimes. Like, there's a lot of like just, you have to suspend belief in the convenience of some of these things. But I was like twice in the same movie. Come on, man.
Star Wars is so good at like this abandoned thing. Flip a switch, flick it a few times. It's all coming together.
The Falcon hasn't flown in years, but I can fly it perfectly correctly, and it will fly just fine.
I did appreciate that Rian Johnson said, okay, what if like we could go all the way to some other planet and all the way back within 36 hours? And then J.J. Abrams was like, hold my beer. These characters are going to go to 7 different planets in 16 hours. And not only that, but hyperspeed is now so fast that you can light skip and like skip from
the
planet
light skipping
to
was
planet.
Crazy. Can you explain that to me?
They're like micro jumps, basically.
But how are the TIE fighters following him?
Because now we can track people through hyperspace.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
That was established, yeah. And
I thought TIE fighters couldn't jump through hyperspace.
They have I think the new ones have hyperdrive. I mean, like, remember Thrawn was exploring that during the TIE Defender had hyperdrives in the Age of the Empire, so I'm sure that that part didn't bother me as much because I'm sure that like they could have put that technology to work by 30 years later. But the light speed skipping was interesting. It was cool visually, but it was weird.
I did appreciate that, like, we have so many times had the Millennium Falcon fly so that other TIE fighters hit boulders and rocks and ships that we've literally made a verb out of it. When Finn says, are you going to boulder the TIE fighters? I was just like, okay, that's you could have tried doing something different, but at least you're hanging a lampshade on the fact that you do that move in all 9 goddamn movies.
I do want to point out I do want to point out one thing, just like a devil's advocate for even myself in the situation. But if a lot of this stuff we're talking about, light speed skipping and like the Force battling through the diet, always got a weird things. If this had happened in the Clone Wars or Rebels, we would never bat an eye. We'd all be like, "Oh, this is so cool." I think even in like Ahsoka, we don't really bat the eyes at some of the weird shit that happens. But like, I think it's the fact that it's a movie and they feel like a little separate or like special within the Star Wars universe, like. Weirder shit happens in the Clone Wars and Rebels. Much weirder shit. They they ride some wolves into the ground and appear on the other side of a planet. And like no one batted an eye.
Obviously.
So I just want to like point that out, that I think it's interesting that we have like different kind of standards for the animated series and shows versus the movies, even though they're all canon and taking place in the same universe.
I will say for me, I don't think it's a standard of live action versus animation.
Mhm.
I think it's the force versus technology. The Loth Wolves, the space whales, a lot of the stuff, all the weird stuff that happens on Mortis. Purgles, yeah, exactly. All of that is very force initiated. Whereas this
Fair.
is just like all of a sudden we have this technology. And like I don't want to know the technology of hyperspace, but the fact that all of a sudden it's doing stuff that's so different than what it's done before,
Mhm.
does it actually bother me? No. Did it look really cool? Yes. Did it just was like, why make it 16 hours? Make it 3 days. Like
Fair. They were in a
Yeah.
rush. Palpatine was going to take over.
They had to get going.
Oh, the other thing is he put his broadcast out and was like ready to launch his ships a day later. He was like, I'm not wasting any time. Let's launch a mass fleet.
yeah.
That's not true. Like his initial broadcast?
Wasn't this broadcast put out and like a week later he was ready to launch the ships?
You said a day. Okay.
Okay,
And that makes a big difference to
a
me.
couple days.
Because Kylo Ren had to go find him first and then come back to find Rey. And then they have to go find him. So I'm just saying.
That's the other thing
mean-
is that like how far is this planet? They had to go through they had to go to like
The stuff.
Yeah, with the nebula, that's what it's called. They had to go through the freaking nebula and then back in. And I'm like, what? How fast are we moving?
You know, and like all this stuff about the broadcast, it'd be really fun to talk about like what was the broadcast he made and like how did that lead to like why did he want to move so fast? Except we never saw the broadcast.
Yeah. Who knows?
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Somewhere it's on Wikipedia. The actual words of the broadcast are: at last the work of generations is complete, the great error is corrected, the day of victory is at hand, the day of revenge, the day of the Sith. I don't remember where it was. Novelization. It was in a novelization.
But again, like that's not in the movie, so it doesn't count when we talk about the movie.
Right. I'm gonna say that like that right there, just include that would have taken a minute of screen time, would have made it better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, I don't know. If we may, I also want to just talk about the end, kind of the endish of the, not the end, but the final stand on Exegol.
Mm-hmm.
The way that Palpatine restored himself by like sucking the Force energy out of Kylo and Rey, and before that, again, the Knights of Ren, who were like so hyped up in Episode 7, non-existent in Episode 8, are kind of bopping around like stalking people in Episode 9, and then Kylo defeats them all handily in like 1 minute on screen by himself.
Girl.
What?
They didn't even do anything. Like this whole time you've been talking about like the Knights of Ren are so cool. I'm sitting here like, I don't even know who you're talking about because I've never noticed them. And then I'm watching this movie again and I'm like, where did they ever tell us who they were?
Flashback.
They're just kind of like fucking there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's never like, oh no, the Knights of Ren are coming. Like I kind of would love that. Like it's a cheesy, sure, but it's like, can we put like a label on it or like, oh, these guys are showing up more than once? I don't know.
Yeah, and they're explored in the comics. I know it's not the movies, but like, and they're like hashed out. But like, all we get in Episode 7, we get like Snoke saying, "You're the master of the Knights of Ren," and like you see them in that flashback that Rey has, and like they were hyped up a lot in the promotional materials of like this like occult Sith like elite group, basically like CO Team 6 for the Sith, basically. And then like we just didn't get anything about them. You're right. And then like JJ threw him back in Episode 9. And I was just like, where have you guys been? What's happening? And then you just get defeated so easily. It's like, what the hell? You guys look, it's like the coolest design of characters. Probably spent so much money on those costumes and then killed them off so quickly.
Yeah.
Literally.
But then Palpatine sucked up their life force, which was interesting. And he's restored to his former glory and then fires off the largest Sith lightning I have ever seen in the existence of mankind.
That was crazy.
Which, again, visually, fucking sick.
It was wide.
Wide. Seeing him just like ravage all the ships at the same time. Not hit any of his own ships, but just hit all of the, resistance ships, and they're all going down. Kylo's been flicked off a cliff. He's like, as I fell, now the last of the Skywalkers will fall too. It's like still holding a grudge. Comical. But I will say, for me, my favorite single moment in the entire movie, and I know there are mixed emotions on this, but when Rey looks up and it just fades to the stars and you hear the voice of all of the old Jedi. I mean, and I could pick them out one by one. I started crying in the movie theater. I will not lie. Like hearing Anakin and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and Ahsoka and Mace Windu and Caddy Mudi, like all of these. I just, oh my God, it was so cool to like hear all of them, hold her up and bring her up, and then like the way that she like fights back, where like she's not like, again, very like unlike the Jedi, like other Jedi to me, like she was just blocking. She wasn't like attacking. And she uses Leia and Luke's lightsaber, which including Leia's lightsaber, great little moment they had in there. But and it broke the chain of the Sith, because at this point, no Sith apprentice kills Palpatine. No one attacks him. He is killed by his own lightning. And to me, epitomized the way that Luke was trying to teach. Like, he didn't actually fight Kylo. He kept dodging him. And Rey didn't actually have to fight Palpatine. He just had to like throw his hatred and reject him, basically. And to me, that was one of the successful parts of this movie. That one of my favorite parts of this movie.
I like that idea. I didn't get that from the movie. Like I see how it's there. I just didn't walk away thinking that.
I also had read somewhere that all of those Jedi had recorded. I don't know how true this is, so grain of salt, but that they had recorded those lines in costume, like were filmed recording them, and like we would have seen like Force Ghosts appearing behind Rey in that moment.
Oh, that's really cool.
And he would have really loved to see that. But then it also makes me think about like the fact that like Obi-Wan's like, Luke, I cannot interfere. I cannot interfere when you face Vader. And then every Jedi who's ever lived is like, we will interfere when you face Palpatine, Rey. We got you. Don't you worry. Like poor Luke being just left out to dry.
Or they're all sitting there like, this guy fucking sucks and he won't go away. So God damn it, fine, we'll help.
All the Jedi,
like it's against Ghost Code, but
all the Jedi like watching Luke fight, just like you can't see them. They're like throwing popcorn back, watching the duel between Vader and Luke. Like, damn, Will Annie's getting cooked right now. Oh my God.
I want us to wrap up pretty soon. We've gone about an hour, but Alex, it seemed you had some thoughts about a kiss.
Yeah, that part of the movie, like it went from like my favorite part of the movie to maybe my least favorite part of the movie. Because like Rey basically like uses her energy, I guess, to defeat Palpatine, but then like she's like dead for a second. Like, why was she dead for a second? And then Kylo is like, or Ben, I'm sorry, now he's Ben. It's like, I'm going to redeem myself without saying a word by reviving her. And then like Rey kisses her. And like, if it's taken from a moment of like, I guess like you just saved my life, like a momentary moment of gratification, like, or like, thank you. I guess maybe if you spin it that way, it's fine. But like, it just like felt so jarring and out of place and weird. And then Ben just dies. It's like Rey dies. We bring her back to life just so they can kiss, and then he dies. And then like, unlike Rey, he just immediately fades into the Force. She doesn't even try anything on him.
Yeah.
All right, Ben's dead. And like, I just don't think he needed to die. Like,
yeah, I
guess like maybe the thought was that like he would have had to stand trial for all his war crimes and they never would have accepted him. But like that would have been an interesting story to me about like, does Ben go into exile? Does he like, what does he do now that he's like tried to turn back to the light side? Is he forgiven? Is he never forgiven? What's his role in the next era of Jedi and the galaxy? But we'll get absolutely fucking none of that. And now the Han Solo, Leia bloodline is now just dead. The Organa bloodline is just dead, and the Solo bloodline is just dead. And I'm just like, damn, I did not need him to die, really. It just didn't. It wasn't a satisfying death. It felt weird. The kiss was jarring. It made me uncomfortable.
All the feelings you want to feel at the end of a movie.
I just like. I know that people complain about like the Rose and Finn kiss. But that felt way more comfortable than this did. This felt like just weird.
I feel Aaron, like I'll have to watch it again, but because I've thought about this and so many people have talked about it online for so long that it's like when I watched it this time around, I kind of wrote it off as like, have you ever done something like with some like other person, you know, and you're so excited that you did something good, you did it right. And it's like maybe you've been spending a lot of time with that person lately, and it's like suddenly it's like, oh fuck, like yes, success, and your faces are close, and then you just fucking kiss, and then it's like, oh, okay, well that was just like, I guess, yeah, like excitement, you know, that's all that was. So it's like that's kind of what I wrote it off as, is like, I feel like she's just so excited, and like, yeah, they've had this weird like tension between them.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't like that he just died though, because I wanted the confirmation of them being like, okay, but we're not like gonna skip into the sunset together.
Yeah. And then
But
Ray was
instead-
just like sad for a second, and then just like got back together with everyone else. And also all the while this is happening, fucking like Jana and Finn are riding space horses on top of a Star Destroyer, and I just
Yeah.
shit was
Wait.
wild. I mean, like I was having fun with it. I was at a certain point. I literally just said to myself, "Fuck it, Jesus, take the wheel." Like I'm just gonna try and enjoy because I do not know what is gonna happen next in this movie. And I think my ADHD chaotic nature makes me enjoy the movie because of that. But like I understand why a lot of people think it's a hot mess because, again, we have a giant beam of force lightning being fired from below after a 120-year-old man just sucked the life force out of two 30-year-olds, and horses are riding on Star Destroyers in a planet that has not existed until just now.
For me, it's when Gianna and Finn jumped onto the top of the Millennium Falcon, which then zipped away very quickly with them on top of it.
Yup.
Which is not the first, but the second time in that movie that the Millennium Falcon flies right next to a Star Destroyer without anyone in the Star Destroyer being. And granted, in that second one, it's a big battle. But you remember, like early in the movie when Kylo and Rey are having their fight, and she's like, "Oh look, my ride's here, the Millennium Falcon. Peace out." And like none of the guns of the ship were like, "Oh, the Millennium Falcon's coming close. Maybe we should do something about
Tractor
Yeah.
beam, anything. She just jumped through the shield into outer space, and it just pulled onto the ship.
Yup.
Yeah, that shit was crazy too. Yeah, I don't know. That was, and it was in that scene, by the way, on the top of the ship where supposedly like Finn was supposed to, instead of like BB-8 kind of being involved, like Finn was supposed to use the Force to like throw the bombs down there, and like, or that was like the moment where like he was going to use the Force when they decided to cut it.
Of course they did.
Before we wrap up, I want to very quickly, just two characters we didn't touch on. Hux and his weird little arc, and what's homeboy's name? His superior.
Oh, Allegiant General something or other.
Yeah, him. He was badass, high key. I wish he'd been in earlier movies. Also would have liked Phasma to be in this movie. Still mad about that. But Hux just being like, "I'm the spy." That was funny, but like, why? Yeah. And like, he always said, "I just need Kylo Ren to lose." Like, you're just that petty, basically. Is that the legacy of Armitage Hux? Is died petty?
Well, it is now.
Especially because he doesn't seem to realize that for Kylo to lose, it generally means that the ship that the big bad person is on blows up. And Hux is planning to hang out on that. Yeah, he has no... Like, if he'd been like, "I'm planning to take over, but I need Kylo to be humiliated or killed."
Right.
Sure. But
and then like
none of that.
It's just like revealed so quickly. It's like, we found our spy, and then just one blaster bolt to the chest. Like, that could always be a meme. Like, it's just his body flying backwards.
No, literally. I was so shocked because I totally forgot how he died. So I'm like minding my business, watching this movie, like da da da, and then Hux is like, "They got away, or whatever," and he just like turns and just doof, and he went flying. I was like, "Is that how he actually dies? Like, is he?" And then I just kept watching the movie, like, "Oh, but he's actually not. But he's actually not coming back. He's not coming back. He's gone." Damn.
In the original episode 9 script, before everything got completely changed, Hux was the de facto chancellor who had taken over, and the way he dies is when the rebellion takes place on Coruscant. He commits seppuku with Mace Windu's lightsaber. The original episode 9 script. If anyone has any interest, it's online in its entirety. It is fascinating. High key might have been a better movie than this one. Really fun read though, if you have any spare time. Okay. Before we go to the bonus content, let's just talk about the very last scene of the movie.
I would like to mention somebody.
Please, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to give you a chance after Alex did.
Okay, carry on.
Oh, the last thing I wanted to say was very quickly, just they show up at Tatooine. I appreciated the nod to the original Lars homestead, and the movie where we started. I appreciated that. And seeing like the little Force ghost of Luke and Leia kind of giving her a nod. Again, I appreciated. I could have done without the old woman who we don't know showing up with her little Eopie being like, "Who are you?" I'm Rey Skywalker. Like, what? Was that necessary? I don't know. I don't really know if that was necessary. I think like a peaceful moment of her just watching the sunset and seeing the Force ghost of Luke and Leia nod at her would have been fine. Also, like burying the lightsaber. Anakin is rolling over in whatever fucking Force universe he's in. You're gonna bury his lightsaber in sand? The poor man.
I feel like we could have had a really cool like montage of her like doing some of the forms, like some lightsaber practice. Not like a montage, but like the sun is setting and she's okay. So you guys are not amused by that
No, I am.
idea, but
I can see it. I can see it being cool.
Yeah, that lady was just kind of like abrupt.
Yeah. And like I don't mind at all the idea that she's a Skywalker, but again, there was no setup for it. It just kind of felt out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And again, maybe there was supposed to be more of like Leia kind of like adopting her, Leia saying like, you are the one who will, carry on for me and my brother or something like that. But we didn't get it because Carrie Fisher passed away.
Yeah.
So, Erin, what about you? Any other last things you wanted to bring up? Alex and I had quite a lot to say.
Mention Lando.
Oh,
we got him back.
Good call.
Billy D. Williams. Back in the house. Back in the Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that moment. That was a sick moment of like, Poe's like, I don't even fucking remember what he was going to do, but he's like, I'm going to hit it. And they're like, oh, you're not going to make it. I'm fast. And Lando goes, but the Falcon's faster. Yeah, it was just so good.
That was sweet.
It was weird though that they made him have an illegitimate child, I guess, that was taken as a stormtrooper, but was not explored any further.
Oh, they were being serious about that?
There's an entire book. Where they
that's like actually his kid.
That's actually his daughter who was stolen.
Jana?
Jana, how do you say it? Is it Jana? It was stolen when she was a baby by the First Order to make her into a stormtrooper.
That's crazy, dude.
All the while, we also are aware that Lando was traveling the universe or galaxy with Luke, looking for Sith relics. So, like, was he just like bopping around with his buddy Luke while his daughter was being enslaved by the First Order? A lot of questions there. But I also did enjoy seeing Billy D. Williams. I agree. His random cold entrance in Pisana was wild.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wasn't prepared.
Yeah, all of it just makes the galaxy feel so small, that like they go to the one random planet and he's there and they find this one random stormtrooper and she's his daughter and Rey. What? One last happy thing. Come on, someone find one more good thing to say about this movie.
I love I feel almost that Rey and Poe are like jealous exes of Finn. Like they both want Finn and they hate each other because the other person is a threat to their relationship with Finn. Like I really liked the opening sequence, but that one sequence where it's like, what did you do to the Falcon? What did you do to my droid? But what did you do to the ship? It's like, what did you do to my droid? Well, he's not on fire. Well, half of him's missing.
Sorry.
And she goes, you know what you are? You're difficult. Really difficult. You are a really difficult man. And I'm just like, yeah. I like Poe being called on his shit for the second movie in a row.
Yeah, but it definitely had that like, okay, just kiss already energy, you know, like that's why my little polyamorous heart wanted the three of them to kind of ride off into the sunset together.
Yeah, and then instead we just got again Poe loving this other girl. I don't know. I thought that the movie was a really fun adventure, and it might not have had the same like gravity or weight as The Last Jedi. It might not have had the same nostalgia Episode 7. But I think that, you know, for a fun space adventure that like you get to see the original characters, interact with the new characters, you get to like it was extremely fan servicey, which is J.J. Abrams' specialty. But I don't know. As a fan, I enjoyed being serviced in this instance. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna let's rephrase that one.
Children, don't make me turn this bus around.
It was very fan servicey, but as a fan, I appreciated that, and I really think that I got to see like a lot of the characters I wanted to see. I got to explore some Sith lore. I got like a little bit of everything I really wanted, even if it didn't all make total sense, and they've had to backfill it for 5 years. Whatever. It's always going to be a fun movie to me that I'm going to enjoy watching, and I know that a lot of people don't like it, but as long it exists, I have it on Blu-ray. George Lucas can't destroy those copies like he did the holiday special, so I can watch this movie till the day I die.
That's true. I will say, closing, I'm excited to watch this movie with my parents, because every time we cover like a Star Wars movie, I'll watch it with them at some point, either before or after we cover it, just because I'm excited about the movie. And it's just like fun enjoying it with them. And I love being like that Star Wars encyclopedia. Like they're always like, wait, so who's this? Wait, so what does that mean?
Yeah.
Wait, so what's that? And I'm like, I got you. Let's pause it. Get out your notebooks. I want there to be notes.
Yeah. I think like if this was one of the standalone movies like Solo or Rogue One, I'd like it a lot more. Fair. And I think a movie that had to not only be the end of the trilogy, but the end of the whole 9-movie saga, that's a very high bar to reach. And I'm disappointed that the movie didn't reach it, but yeah, on its own, it's great. So let me just switch topics quickly, because we did let there be a Solo on Solo episode, and Erin had a lot of great things to say. I hope everyone has listened to it. Certainly send in your listener feedback, as always. Send in your listener feedback about this episode. But Erin, I want to close by asking you one simple question.
I'm so ready for this.
So I know you're into astrology. What is it that decides, like you mentioned you're an Aries, you're a fire sign. What does that mean? Like what is the thing that that declares that you're an Aries?
Have you met her?
No. I just mean like it's about something that's happening in terms of different like
it's
objects.
Where the moon is when you're born. It's like the moon phase. Like it's the stars. What constellations are in the sky when you're born, basically.
Right. The constellations around
the
planet Earth.
You can actually fuck off.
No, I'm just
They're making fun of me right now because I made a joke about Han Solo's zodiac sign and
what is it?
Trying to figure it out. Well, they suggested
there is not because he's born under totally different stars. That's the whole point.
I'm being mocked, but I was just trying to connect with the girlies and have a good time. Okay,
that's fair. I like the idea. I just had to point out.
That's what I thought. I thought he was a Leo. They said Sag.
His face. We're done. We've spoken. We're out.
Bonus content.
Virgo out.
Oh, stay classy, emo Camino.
You're a really difficult man.
That's what we say to all the Aries.
And the Cancers.
I'll take it. That is true.
Cancers are difficult men.
All right, welcome back, members. We've got two. I'm going to tell a story that is nothing to do with podcast, but I think will just be amusing to everyone. And then the two of them are going to talk about a pretty awesome Star Wars thing they got to do. But first, I just need to share one particular moment that anyone who's watching on the YouTube will understand. But for those of you listening at home, when Alex made the comment about that he doesn't mind being serviced, and Erin completely lost it.
No.
What? I wasn't going to say anything about you, Erin.
Okay, no, I'm about to be roasted. I'm ready for it.
Now, hold on a second here. I'll do that again. What you may have missed if you're watching from home, what you may have missed if you're just listening, is that when Alex made the comment about that he doesn't mind being serviced, He was leaning back in his chair with his hands behind his head with a smug. It just was like such the perfect, hilariously awful moment. So I just had to bring that back a second for the members. Now that I've
Pain.
horrified Erin
It
somehow,
was
and I'm not quite sure how,
unintentional.
'cause I didn't get the double entendre until Erin pointed it out. But
I got it as soon as the words left my mouth. I was like,
moment.
fuck. Fuck. Out of myself on
How
the
do you
podcast.
unsay words?
we'll cut all that out. All right, welcome back, members. I'm going to tell you a quick story that has nothing to do with this podcast, just because I want to get my podcast hosts' feedback on this. And then they're going to tell another story that's a lot more relevant about getting to meet someone really awesome. So I want to tell you the story about this last weekend and how it may be the time that I've decided that I should believe in the Fae, or that there's at least some sort of force that is playing with my life, but it's more chaotic and
What is the
mischievous.
Fae?
Oh, like fairies.
Oh, okay.
That it's more mischievous than malevolent. So I went to the city of Columbus this weekend in order to judge Star Wars Unlimited tournaments. A great game that I want to teach you guys at some point. If any of my listeners are paying attention to it, please write in and let us know. And the night that I was there, my phone died. Like, it just bricked itself. It would not turn on. I tried charging it. I charged it with like 5 different cables. I made sure that those cables were working. I did everything I could to try and fix my phone. Nothing worked. And I restarted it. I hard restarted it. I tried changing where I was plugged into, make sure those plugs work. Like, everything I tried didn't work. And I needed it to like get through the next couple of days and also to get home.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as it turns out, in our mass consumerist society, I was able to literally go on DoorDash at 11 p.m. on a Friday night and have Target send me a $50 burner phone, which worked almost as good as my own phone. So that's kind of ridiculous. So I then have all sorts of stupid parking experiences, but winds up with someone from the city of Columbus Department of Parking telling me I can park on a particular street because I'm disabled and feed the meter, and that it will be fine even through Sunday. And she knows the exact parking zone that I'm talking about. She's like, yep, all through Sunday will be fine. Sunday night, I go out to check on my car. Car's gone. My friend Christopher, who was staying with me, his car is also gone. Turns out there was some kind of 5K run that day. And so all cars were told they were supposed to move at like Saturday at 6 p.m. But of course, I wasn't checking my car at Saturday at 6 p.m. because I'd paid for all the parking. It was supposed to be fine. We try to call the Department of Parking that says like, hey, if your car gets towed, call this number, you'll be fine. Number says you have to call back tomorrow morning. And of course, we're from out of town. We're trying to get out of town. So not so great. We tried 2 other ways to call. Nothing works. Finally, Christopher's like, screw this. Christopher just calls 911. They tell him this is not emergency and hang up on him. He calls back and finally gets through. They transfer him to someone who actually answers the phone at some different police department of parking and transportation. I promise this is going somewhere. And they say, oh, don't worry. All the cars have been moved a couple of blocks over. Just go over there and you'll find your cars. So we go over, we find Christopher's car. We don't find my car. I call through the city, again, having to use the stupid 911, but transfer me to this other thing. And by the way, can you give me a direct line so I don't have to call 911? No, we can't do that. Fair enough. And they have no record of my car. So as far as I can tell, either A, some car thieves decided, you know what, all these cars are about to get towed. Let's go and steal a couple, which is a little odd because my car was an utter piece of shit, like completely had the crap beaten out of it. Literal pieces were missing from it. But maybe they stole it. Or, as I think is most likely, the city of Columbus stole my car. So that was all just kind of like ridiculous and terrible until I realized 2 things. One, as I said, the car was a piece of crap. And I was looking for an excuse to get rid of it so I could get a new car. So that's not the worst thing in the world. And I realized there was one thing in that car. My prosthetic leg. So someone, possibly the city of Columbus, possibly someone else, had stolen my car and my prosthetic leg, which I actually needed to get replaced at some point soon. So maybe this is all for the good. And that morning, I'm getting packed up, and I'm just like, as you're kind of like moving stuff around, like if you see something, you just like plug it in to get it out of the way. And I pick up a phone and I plug it in, and I realize, oh, it's my broken phone. Like I should unplug that. And the motherfucking thing turns back on.
Nice.
But you didn't get your car back?
Nope. The city of Columbus stole my car. As far as I can understand, that is literally what happened.
What the fuck?
I filed a police report. I talked to the cop. The cop was all like, do you want to press charges? I was like, well, what does that mean? And I was wondering, like, does it mean like you're going to look for my car only if I say it? He says, oh, if you say you want to press charges, that means that if we find your car and it's being driven, we can pull out our guns when we pull it over. And I was like, the fuck no, we're not doing that. But yeah, the city hasn't called me back. No one's found the car. So
God damn.
I lost my car. I lost my prosthetic leg. I got my phone back.
That's a wild weekend.
That
Right?
is a wild weekend.
Anyway,
this
well,
past
Glad you made
weekend?
it back safe.
Yeah,
you know?
right?
Damn.
Did you fly or just drive home with? You probably just went home with your friend.
No,
then?
I had like 4 different people like ferry me from like one point to another. So we got a ride
wow.
from like Columbus to Chicago, and then part of the way further, and then part of the way further, and then
Mhm.
Finally my wife came down and picked me up and took me home.
Nice.
So how about you
Nice.
guys? What'd you get up to this weekend? I heard you had a kind of cool, more Star Wars related story.
It was so not this past weekend, but the previous weekend we went to Twin Cities Con, and Erin and I got to get a photo with Hayden Christensen, aka Anakin Skywalker. And then I waited in line later, even though I had a scheduled time, for about 3.5 hours to get him to sign my lightsaber.
Mhm.
Nice.
Another double entendre, apparently. I'm kidding. I'm sorry, Erin. So when we first met him, first of all, this poor man was definitely
This
just like
guy.
overbooked, thrown into this. He looked tired.
I've never seen someone look so tired.
He was like, "Hey guys, what's going on?" Like, he was like just vibing, like
Shook our hands. How's it going?
He smelled like coffee and cigarettes, like just trying to get through the day. And Erin handed him a lightsaber. We got a cute little photo together. It was such a quick experience, but I got to shake Hayden Christensen's hand 2 times in one day, so that was cool.
It's kind of crazy. Yeah.
And then once I finally got through the line, to get him to sign the lightsaber, the issue was that like they'd overbooked him, so like he was taking photos for way longer than he should have been and wasn't signing things for long enough. And he came back, and like I was one of the last people that got in before he had to go back to taking photos. Thank God I wasn't gonna wait any longer. But I had to chat with him for a minute. I got to shake his hand. He was really kind. Still like had energy. This was much later in the day. And I was like trying to think of a question to ask him, and then I panicked and I said, how well can you see out of the Darth Vader suit? Well, I think I said, how well can you see when you were fighting with the lightsaber? And he goes, I'd have to fight with the lightsaber that much in the suit, but it was very hard to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a very brief. It was very brief. You had to keep moving along, but I was just like frantic. I just like yelled, and I didn't yell at him, but I was just like, I have a question. Darth Vader suit, hard, difficult, lightsaber fight, good, bad, Obi-Wan show. And he was just like, yeah, I didn't have to fight that much in the suit, but like it was hard to see. It was hard to walk around. And I was like, oh, that's good to know. Thank you. Bye. I just ran away with my lightsaber.
I love this.
Which is now in a little place of honor on top of my shelf in between my Lego R2D2 and Lego BD1.
There you go. Erin, what about yourself? What was it like to meet the great Mr. Hayden?
The chosen one.
The chosen one. I mean, I just thought he looked tired as shit. He was excited I gave him a lightsaber,
That's cool.
He was like, sweet. But it was a chill experience. Like Alex said, like it's always a very quick experience to do any sort of a photo op. Like they literally go like, they'll be like, and pose, next, pose, next, like at that pace. Like people are like, anyways. So yeah, you never really get to talk to them during that period. Oh, I said to him, I was like, I love your work. He went, thank you. Typical. But yeah, so Alex got more Hayden time than I did
That's fair.
this time around.
I love that, man. The photo is adorable.
It is adorable.
And the lightsaber is now my prized possession. I had him sign it in blue because the lightsaber is blue. And my goal, y'all, because I'm going to Star Wars Celebration in Japan in April,
That's
is to, if Mark Hamill is there, get him to sign the same lightsaber even though I am aware that he charges like $750 for an autograph. So we'll see if that actually happens.
Alex.
But I don't know if I actually have that kind of money. But I would, in a
Bonkers.
perfect world, would love Anakin and Luke Skywalker to both be signed on the famous lightsaber, which would be really cool.
Yeah.
But again, money is a real thing. So
Well,
It
we
is.
should talk because there's now a small chance I will be joining you in Japan.
Ah.
Apparently, one of the big championships of Star Wars Unlimited will be happening there, and as I'm now one of the kind of higher ranked judges, there's a small chance at least that I might get to go. So
that'd be pretty sick. Yeah, me and my
That would be so
like
fun.
childhood best friend are gonna go for 2 weeks, make a whole trip out of it, but then
nice.
gotta lock in at the end of the trip just to be all Star Wars celebration all the time.
That's what I
I'm
do.
like ready to fucking rock. I'm so excited. I'm so excited about that.
That's gonna
Nice.
be awesome.
Well, I'm glad you guys had a much better weekend than I did. And I'm glad mine, at least, as
Yeah.
I said, kind of bittersweet. I lost 2 things that I really wanted to lose, so
That's fair. That is
good
fair.
things there.
I'm so
But,
sorry that happened to you.
Yeah,
So
glad
that's really
you guys
tough.
get good experiences, and we will keep chatting. Thank you, all
Yeah.
members. We have spoken.
Stay classy, not Columbus, Ohio.
What'd you do to my droid?
What'd you do to my ship?
What'd you do to my podcast?
That was a good answer.
It's valid.
Oh.